Okay, so today I want to compare the Samsung Galaxy A5 2017 with the Samsung Galaxy A7, and we have to set one thing straight from the start. It really comes down to how big the price difference in your country is, because I've read about countries where they say it's pretty much the same, maybe like $50 of a difference, and it doesn't make sense to buy the A5 2017, but then I also got comments from people saying that there is a difference of $200 or even sometimes more dollars, and of course that makes quite a big difference. But if you also want to maybe know how it compares to the A5 2016, I will compare that as well, because there you can save even more so money, because it's after all 1 year older and it is noticeably cheaper. So I would say let's start off with the first thing, design and build quality. And one thing up front, maybe due to the camera you will see some flickering later on, but this is really a camera thing, nothing you will ever see in real life. Now, as you can see, the A5 is noticeably taller. It is also actually noticeably wider, but as you can see, a little bit thinner. So of course the S7 feels noticeably more compact in the hand, even nicer, because I kind of like the chunky feel. The A5 feels a little bit thinner, but besides that, they actually feel very similar, because we have the curve on both sides here, and the similarities are very big. So let's actually get around both just so we can see that. We have the power button a little bit lower on the S7, which is something that I prefer. Therefore, we have the speaker here on the right upper side, which is a little bit odd. We still have that, of course, on the bottom on the S7. Otherwise, what do we have? We have quite similar microphone settings. Here we have the SIM card and SD card tray on the S7. Here on the A5, it's only the SD card tray, because the SIM card tray is here. As you can see, volume rockers very similar, not a big difference. On the bottom, we can see USB Type-C on the A5, where we still have, but that was back then just still normal, the micro USB port. Headphone jacks are a little bit different here, because we have the speaker on this side, which is okay because I prefer it on this side. Other than that, we have a notification LED on the S7, which is missing on the A5, but therefore we have always on display on both, which is okay. As you can see, bezels are quite similar on both. The S7 maybe does a slightly better job. In terms of the fingerprint reader, what I don't like so much on the S7 is that you have to press and then wait. Other than that, it is actually quite fast, because as you can see here, a little tap is enough. So that is not a big problem. But what I like on the A5 is that you just have to hold on and not have to press. And it is actually quite a fast one. But as you can see, even if my finger is already off, it takes quite a while for the screen to turn on with the unlock. If it's already on, as you can see, it is usually very fast. Once again. So I like it a little bit more here, but I think the actual speed is a little bit better on the S7, but it really comes down to what you prefer. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Build quality, in my opinion, is pretty much the same. I definitely like the color here a little bit more. This one is not the greatest one, but we have black here as well. The camera is protruding just a little bit on the S7, where it's completely flush on the A5. I guess this would be it. Now I want to get to the sound. Usually I get to the display now, but there is a reason for that, but you will see that because of the way I will show off both. So let's start actually off with the A5 so we can see the sound of that one. And I will put them both on the desk just so we have the same conditions, because at least then both can reflect from somewhere, because this otherwise, if I would hold it like this, couldn't reflect where the S7, and then it could have an advantage. At least now both can reflect from the desk with the microphone being somewhere up here. So let's get to that. This was the wrong folder. No, okay. As you can see, actually blocking it sometimes in landscape, especially during gaming, is possible, so just keep that in mind. Now let's switch over to the S7. Okay, I never know how actually it well translates over the microphone, but here is what I see. What I prefer on the S7 is that if I usually hold it like this, it can reflect. If I hold it in landscape, it reflects. And it is a tad louder, almost not noticeable, so that does make a difference, but it sounds a little bit warmer, richer. Now, the A5 has the disadvantage of firing sideways, which is okay if you hold it, in my opinion, the wrong way downwards, so it could reflect on some kind of surface. But if you usually have it in your hand, no matter how I use it, it wasn't reflecting, so that's a little bit of a downer. Otherwise, like I said, the volume very similar, just not quite as full. Headphone jacks are actually so close on both that I won't really choose a winner. Actually, a quite good job from both. And now I would say let's get into the comparison part of the displays. And I have to kind of use my ghetto setup now so I can actually compare both side by side. And this needs a little bit of some adjustment. Okay, let's switch this. And yes, I just made this on my own. Okay, let's quickly unlock both and talk about the display. Okay, as you can see here, these are both, of course, like I said, there will be some flickering. So let's quickly get to the start so we can see some things. And what is the main difference? We have 0.1 inches more here. This one is 5.1, this one is 5.2. Quad HD on this one, full HD on this one, but actually, I have to say there is not a whole lot of a difference because the minimal extra sharpness you don't notice in real life. What you will notice actually, as you can see here, the calibration is actually very, very similar. Also brightness, both are on 45%. But what you will notice if you really look very closely, colors are just a little bit darker on the S7. As you can see here, this looks a little bit lighter. And of course, this won't translate all that well over the cam, but this is what I can tell you. Otherwise, viewing angles are very similar. Maximum brightness is a little bit better on the S7, especially in sunlight, but absolutely fine on both. Blacks are, of course, great due to AMOLED, but the colors, I think the calibration is great. This is both on adaptive, by the way. And as you can see, there is a little bit more oomph to the colors. But honestly, if I wouldn't have this side-by-side comparison, I would not notice, and I wouldn't care either, because both are absolutely great, both absolutely flagship-like displays. Nothing I could complain here at all. So, yeah. So that's why I would actually already say let's jump into the performance part and let's kill all the apps just so we are on the same terms. Let's launch a few apps. Okay, sorry, that was not fair. Let's try to launch them at the same time. And yeah, as you can see here, the S7 was a little bit faster. Both are on the same connection, so this is always a little bit something that is not always 100% fair. Because as you can see, the S7 launched a little bit quicker, therefore the content was a little bit quicker on the A5. As you can see here, yeah, it looks like the S7 is a little bit ahead, but if that's really enough to make the difference is something that you have to decide. Because in normal use, if it's a tenth of a second more or less, honestly, in my opinion, I could not care less. So, okay, let's check the scrolling here. First, the A5. As you can see here, actually really nice. And on the S7, just as nice as well. So if I try to do it both the same, you will maybe see a little bit of a difference. I think the S7 feels a little bit lighter sometimes, but this is so minor. So browsing performance is absolutely spot on both. If we now go back to Flamingo, as you can see here, there is sometimes an initial lag on the A5, but as you can see here, both perform so nice and smooth. Absolutely great. The S7, if smooth, feels a little bit higher refresh rate, even just a little tad bit, but something you won't really notice because both, as you can see here, are nice. What I've noticed that at the end of the scroll, sometimes the A5 gets a little bit jittery, where the S7 maybe doesn't. But once again, not a huge difference. And sorry if my autofocus has a little bit trouble. Not much I can do here. Here once again, here you will see a little bit more lag, but here as well. So this is mostly an app thing. But as you can see, both are nice, both are smooth. So there might be a small difference, but I can't really say it's big. As you can see here, great. Multitasking is a little bit nicer on the S7, but that's pretty much about it. All I can say is, as you have seen, both do an absolutely nice job in terms of smoothness. Like I said, if I really have to boil it down and really be super nitpicky, really a pixel peeper, if you could call it that on performance, the S7 feels ever so slightly more lightweight, a little bit higher refresh rate scrolling, but therefore it has a little bit of an inconsistent scroll, especially if I, for example, go into a naked browser now. And if I go to the same page, for example, this one here once again. This is actually where I notice a bigger difference, because as you can see here, this is absolutely still smooth. But there is a little bit of jerkiness sometimes on the S7, as you can maybe see. So I'm personally, in my daily use, not perfectly happy with the scrolling in naked browser, which is of course nothing most people use, but here is something where I notice that the A5 is a little bit more consistent. It maybe not always the faster one, but a little bit more consistent, but really a minor thing. When it comes to gaming, actually A5's 2017, due to just pushing Full HD, is a little bit better. But if you put the Samsung Galaxy S7 on Full HD, then it's once again so close that it doesn't matter, but both deliver quite absolutely fine gaming experience. Now, let's get to battery life. Both need about 1.5 hours to charge, which is absolutely fine, but the difference is the standby drain. No, it's not the battery life, because on the A5 I got around 5 hours, I would say, on mobile data, 6 on mixed use and 7 or maybe even sometimes 8 on actual Wi-Fi only use. I noticed there is a little bit of a bigger difference here because the A5 has a little bit of a weaker reception, therefore drains a little bit harder. That's why 5 hours maybe doesn't sound all that great on mobile data only, because even mixed use you could get even maybe 6, 6.5, so it's better here. Where the S7 maybe gets like 3.5 sometimes if it's really bad, or even 4 hours. That's maybe pretty much the best I can get on data only. I've managed to already drain it in below 3 hours, but that was on heavy use and really driving a lot with the car where it reaches for data only a lot. And that is a little bit of an issue, but there is a difference. That I would say at least 1.5, if not even 2 hours of screen on time, I would say, in mixed use. Something you have to consider, because the S7 doesn't have the best reception either, and especially on mobile data it drains noticeably more than it drains on Wi-Fi, because there I could usually get over 6 hours, and it is already running Nougat. So in theory it should be even better. For me, the difference between Marshmallow and Nougat was pretty much non-existent. Now, let's talk about the software. And yes, I know a lot of people will now complain that I'm using a custom or a third-party launcher, which is Nova, but if you really have a problem with that, not something that I can help you. Okay, as you can see here, there is a little bit of a difference, but this is just because I use a little bit of a mortar where I can adjust the amount of columns, because usually, as you can see, both using the same theme do pretty much the same thing, but we are still on Marshmallow on the A5, as you can see here. So there is a little bit of a difference in terms of the theme, but otherwise, and I don't really want to actually go too much into that, feature-wise they are very similar, and you don't really lose out much still being on actually Marshmallow on the A5, because we already had back then dual window. Of course, maybe some more apps are supported now on Nougat due to the internal dual apps one, but still, pretty much most of the features are the same, and in normal use I really don't notice much of a difference. If there are some minor more features than they are on the S7, but if it's enough to really change anything, at least it didn't for me. Now, I would say let's go into the camera, and this is actually something quite interesting, because it's a little bit of a back and forth, because if my mouse is working, yes it is. As you can see, this now is the A5, and always the first pick will be the A5. This is a little bit of a lower light shot, and this is with the S7. And as you can see, A5, A7. So it gets noticeably more detailed and sharp here, which is definitely nice to see. But let's start off with the outdoor pictures first. As you can see, the A5, very natural picture. Actually, as you can see here, quite a nice amount of details, quite sharp. And now the S7, as you can see, and this is a definite general tendency, it makes pictures make a lot more nicer appearing, but warmer, which is just not accurate, because as you can see here, the amount of sharpness is pretty much the same here. Once again, very natural from the A5. Lots and lots of details here, but just look at this. Here it gets not quite as sharp. If we switch to the S7, as you can see, this looks noticeably sharper still, and it has a little bit more details, but as you can see, colors are a little bit wrong, at least in auto mode. Of course, if you use manual mode, you can correct it, but here, once again, a little bit more details usually on the S7, but also noticeably warmer, just not that correct picture. Here, once again, this already makes a bigger difference, because as you can see, this doesn't look all that super sharp, where it looks a lot more unnaturally warm, but therefore noticeably sharper here with some nicer bokeh, as you can see on the S7. Here, once again, the same picture, a little bit more details now and warmer. And this is, as you can already see on all the pictures, the case. The S7 usually noticeably sharper with a little bit faster shutter times, a little bit more accurate, sharper pictures, but the colors are wrong because here once again, and I could talk about the same thing, I would repeat myself, so I don't want to stretch it too far, but usually you get a higher amount of sharper pictures. Sometimes the S7 or the A5 isn't just as consistent, but I have to say the pictures of the A5 2017 are really nice and accurate. But now, here's the selfie thing. This is the big difference. I've heard a few YouTubers complaining about the camera qualities, but I don't get it of the selfie cam because as you can see here, this is super nice and sharp and the colors look absolutely nice. And the S7 here, this is, I don't know what, maybe it's my unit that never had a proper front-facing camera, but way too blurry and way too warm, as you can see here. It doesn't never look sharp. Here, once again, super nice and sharp. Colors look right. Exposure here, of course, due to the harsh light. But here, the S7. I am not happy with the S7 front-facing camera. For me, it's a crappy flagship camera. And this is obvious in every single picture. Here, once again, this is in artificial light indoors here in the studio. Top picture. S7, not. Once again, a great picture from the A5. Not from the S7. Low light pics. Okay, here once again the S7 gets the upper hand because as you can see this doesn't look bad and is quite okay for a low light cam, but due to not having OIS anymore, you have to keep a steadier hand. And now you can see the big difference of the S7. As you can see here, it gets noticeably sharper. Still tends to be warmer, but as you can see, it adds some extra layer of sharpness in the details. If you are a little bit further away, the difference is not that big, but it is still visible because as you can see here at this part, it gets noticeably better. Here once again, looks still fine, but way better here. And this would have been it for the camera. I'm pretty sure you have noticed it. S7, just to boil it down, sharper, more detailed, a little bit faster in general, but tends to be warmer. You can correct that, of course, manually, but for auto, it's a little bit weird to see. The A5 makes actually still totally passable pictures. Maybe for this price range, they are already better cameras, but it gets the job done. The way better selfie camera though, but this would have been it. Not to make this too long, let's boil it down and let's kind of summarize this. And this is more now, I would say, half subjective, half objective. Design, I give the win to the S7. It is still a little bit more compact, still a little bit nicer to hold. But in terms of build quality, not a real difference. In terms of display, I would almost like to give it a pretty much of a draw. But since this has the resolution that is higher after all, and I don't really notice a big difference, I will still give the win to the S7. Speaker, also S7, better placement, sounds a little bit warmer, is a little bit louder. Headphone jack though, pretty much the same. Performance, I have a hard time deciding what I like more here because I'm by now a little bit annoyed by the inconsistency of the S7 in the apps that I use, because especially Naked Browser, which is important for me as my daily or default browser, has noticeably more lag, which is not the case on the A5. Therefore, maybe the A5 isn't as always as super lightweight smooth, but it's not that big of a difference, especially if not in direct comparison, that I would notice. So I would almost like to give this the win. So, like I said, smoother, not consistent, maybe not 100% perfectly smooth, a little bit sometimes more harder lag, but therefore more consistent. So, kind of a draw. I'll let you decide. Battery though, at least 1.5 hours more screen on time, at least in mixed use on the A5. So, this is the winner. And if battery life is more important for you, and if the S7 doesn't get you through a day, and if you don't have an S7 Edge that you would consider, that is the case. The S7 Edge then would have been at least on par, if not even better. Now, next thing would be the software draw. I can't really change it. Yes, of course, I could give the win because we have Nougat here already, but I don't really notice it in normal life, so I give the win to the S7 after all because it is running the newer version, not to forget that. And then the camera. Overall, I still have to give it to the S7. Even though I found pictures to be just a little bit too warm, but the general user actually, I think, would prefer the nicer pictures, but more accurate is here, but there are more details here. So, as you have seen, the S7 won pretty much every single aspect besides battery life. And now it's up for you to decide. Is it worth that spending like 60, 70 bucks? I would say yes, definitely, overall still. But if the difference is, I would say like some people have commented, like $200, then I would have a hard time being able to justify 200 extra for, as you have seen, yes, it is better in pretty much every aspect, but not by much, especially the build. It's a little bit more compact, but therefore this one has the slightly bigger screen. Build quality is the same. The display in normal use, not noticeable of a difference. Same goes for the sound. Performance I've talked about, battery life, yes. And software, yeah. Okay, the camera, if that's the more important thing for you, maybe it's worth the 200. Hard to tell for me. Of course, the overall winner is the S7. And it really comes down to where you live to make that difference. And now it's up for you to let me know what you thought of this comparison. Was it helpful? Was it not? I don't know, but it was 20 minutes long. That I know, and that's why I will end it right now. And I hope you liked it. Thumbs up, maybe subscription and comments down there below. And please try to keep it civil, because let's all just enjoy tech and not fight about it. Okay, until next time. Bye.